So, yesterday when really well, I read the entirety of the Stephen Thorny Way in less than a day. I started it pretty late and finished it pretty early in the morning. So hopefully today continues that trend. As I'm reading Frostblood by Ellie Blake. Now this seems typical YA fantasy, following Ruby, who is a fireblood in a land ruled by frostbloods, which makes her very existence a crime. So it sounds, kind of similar to books like Heart of Thorns, and stuff like that. So it's very typical YA. So, as always, I will give it to about the quarter mark, which is about 80 pages. If I'm not feeling it at that point, I will probably DNF it, unless it really captures my attention or there's something interesting going on behind the scenes. But I will start reading. 10% of the way through Frostblood. And it's definitely fast paced, I'll give it that. So, just in the opening 40 pages, we're introduced to Ruby, who is a fireblood. It doesn't seem to run in her family. Her mother isn't a fireblood. Don't know about her father, but her grandmother definitely had either the ability to control fire like Ruby does, or she knew a lot about it because she was teaching Ruby before her death. After her grandmother's death, Ruby's mother tells her to hide her ability because their country is ruled by the Frost King, and they have been systematically wiping out firebloods, hunting them down and killing them. And she was doing that, but she was trying to learn in secret how to control her fire, because she has outbursts when she's angry, because she can't control it. However, she does get spotted by soldiers who identify her as a fireblood, because one of the boys in the village rats her out, and this leads to the death of her mother and the entire village. But Ruby isn't killed. She's thrown in prison, and she's in prison for months, losing touch with her gift because the Frostbloods are using that power against her. And so one day, a few Frostbloods, I think you pronounce his name as Arcus, and a monk, free her. And they basically say, we'll free you, but we kind of want to take down the Frost King. So Ruby agrees to help them, and they free her, and they end up taking her to the Abbey, where her wounds are treated, etc. But this is the first time since she's been arrested that she's had time to acknowledge what happened and to actually start grieving for her mother. So yeah, it's fast-paced, it's interesting. So I will update you again at the quarter mark and let you know if I am actually going to finish it. So I'm a quarter of the way through Frostblood. I'm enjoying it. It does read like typical YA fantasy. Ruby is healing up at the Abbey when there's a fire, and even though she helps save someone trapped inside, because firebloods don't feel the effects of heat, they don't burn. Certain people blame her anyway, and she realizes that no, it's really safe for her, so she ends up leaving the Abbey. But she ends up in a situation where she learns that there's a bounty on her head and she's never going to be safe. And in the current state she is, and not being able to control her gift properly, she'll be caught and killed before she can escape. So she decides to go back to the Abbey. When there's a big snowstorm, she almost dies, but Arceus is there to save the day. And the banter between that pair are amazing. Like the synopsis already kind of spoiled the fact that Ruby and Arceus are going to end up together, but they hate each other right now, and the nicknames they come up with, like they're arguing about a horse whose name was Witcher, but Ruby decided to name the horse Butter, so they're talking about which name is better for the horse, and Arceus is like, well, if we named people like that, you'd be the thorn in my backside. And she's like, well, you would be a frigid despot. It's very funny. I hope that continues, because that banter is brilliant. But Arceus did mention that she was going to be taught to control her gift by Brother Thistle, who is a Frostblood master, since there are no Fireblood masters anymore. But she's like, how is he going to train me? He's a Frostblood. He controls ice. I control fire. You know what I mean? But I think the basic premise of being able to control your emotions and temper your gift is going to be the same. So I hope we get some of that soon. You know, some training. But apart from that, not much is really going on right now. So I am going to keep reading and see where it goes. I'm halfway through Frostblood now. I'm actually really liking it. Like, we had big training montage with Ruby learning to control her powers and use them, but she's been struggling because all her life she saw that her power was dangerous and she was told to hide it. So unconsciously she's holding a lot of it back, which is not what Arceus and Brother Thistle need. They need her at her strongest. And she's struggling with it, especially as the time approaches that they're going to head to the palace. And over these few months that she's training, we get to see her grow a lot closer to Arceus. And she actually starts to develop feelings for him, and it's very nice that she's the one that confesses her feelings to him. Especially after she sees that he's got burns down the one side of his face. Think a Sander Clegane situation. And he starts opening up to her a bit more despite being so closed off. He tells her that he inherited his father's title after his death and was in the king's court until someone was sent to assassinate him. But it's also around this time she learns that Brother Thistle believes that there's a prophecy that connects the king's power to his throne. So a bit similar to the Iron Throne in Game of Thrones. And he tells her that her mission isn't actually to kill the king, it's to destroy the Frost Throne. Thinking that, because he believes that if she destroys the throne, it might release the king from the curses in there. But from what we've heard about the king, I think he's just an asshole. I don't think he's under no curse. I think he's just a dick. But Ruby obviously isn't happy about this because she's always seen this as a chance for revenge for the people that killed her mother. But she is coming to see that not all the Frostblood soldiers might agree with what they're doing. Like, Arceus didn't. He didn't agree with it. And that got him severely burned and outcast. But there's also a prophecy referring to a child of darkness and a child of light. And their births were both accompanied by big storms, one from the east and one from the west. Brother Thistle believes that the storm from the west occurred when Ruby was born. Obviously, the child of darkness, I'm not sure who this is. This might be the current king. But it could have been his father, because it was when Brother Thistle was young. So I'm excited to see where this goes, being as in a couple of weeks, they're going to be heading out to the palace. I don't think we're going to get that much, being as this is the first book in a trilogy. But we do know from the synopsis that Ruby ends up in the King's Arena, where strong Firebloods are sent to fight Frostblood champions in order to win their freedom. But no Fireblood has ever survived the trial. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to set out to kill the king or free the king or whatever. And along the way, Ruby is going to get captured and sent to the arena. And then we might get her battling in the arena against Frostbloods, potentially either winning and earning her freedom, or her escaping from the arena. And I think that's where the book is going to end. But I shall check back in at the 3/4 mark, and then again at the end. So I am just over 3/4 of the way through Frostblood. And I was right. Ruby is caught taken before the king, where he gives her a challenge. Basically, because she's a scrawny little shit, he doesn't think she's a warrior. So he's like, oh, go kill this fearsome ice beastie. And if you can, I'll put you in the arena. So off she goes. Doesn't use like any of her training, any of her skills. She's just like, fuck it, die. Beastie dies. She's put in the arena. And she's put against one of the strongest champions. And something happens to her during this fight. Like, she's searching for her calm place, the same way Brother Thistle taught her, and something happens to her. And in that moment, she's able to kill the champion, making her the first Fireblood to ever win in the arena. So she now gets the rewards and privileges of the other champions, even though she's the only Fireblood. And the king himself has taken quite an interest in her. And there's a lot of political scheming going on. But the actual fights, these arena fights, like if you've read God's Grave by J. Kristoff, when Mia is going in and out of the arena, very similar vibes, you know what I mean? There's not just seasoned warriors, there's traitors, there's beasties, there's all manner of shit going down in this arena. But Ruby knows something's happening to her, and from Brother Thistle's interest in prophecies and legends, she got an idea of what's happening. But she doesn't know why it's happening to her, what it means, or how to control this new power. And we see very briefly that this new power does give her a defense against the king's power to drain her gift. But she's going to have to learn to control it and summon it at will. But the way that particular power relates to the prophecy from earlier in the book is not good. It is bad. It is very bad. So she doesn't want this power, but she kind of needs it. So I currently have 80-ish pages left. And I don't know how it's going to end. Because she's in these arenas fights. She's in the king's court. She's not getting out of this. Like, she knows the king isn't going to let her go. Unless she's dead. So she's going to have to try and survive. And figure out a way to deal with the king. Or get around the king. Somehow. So, yeah, I'll check back in at the end and let you know my final thoughts and I literally just finished this, and my god, that last line, like, let's just say Arcus knows how to win over the ladies. Like, damn, boy. Oh my god, like, this was amazing. Like, I've said quite a few times, I am not a big fan of YA fantasy now that I've got older. I prefer the high fantasy, adult high fantasy, which is typically more character driven, more political, with series like Game of Thrones, a lot gorier, a lot more graphic, that I like. I've just come to appreciate there as I grow older. So books like this tend to feel watered down in comparison. And I understand that's because they're aimed at a younger audience, but damn, the ending of this was good. And if I am remembering correctly, I believe this was Ellie Blake's debut novel. If that is correct, then Jesus Christ, I can't wait to see how her writing developed over this series and with anything else she's written. So I will definitely be continuing the series and soon, because hell, I need to see more of this. Like, literally, that last line, when it comes to you, I like to be burned. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. When did you get the right to be this sexy? And I know exactly why. Like, I have found my stereotypical book boyfriend. Like, some people, they have the Fae guy, you know, like Rhysand or Cassian. Some people have the stereotypical bad boy. I've got men with literal trauma. Like, the two men at the minute that I would classify, right, three, as my book boyfriends that literally hold my heart. Before this book, an Arceus. Before Arceus in this book, I had two. And they're from the same series. And they would be Tyrion Lannister. Because no one does banter that like that, man. Like, I still dance around my house sometimes, calling myself the god of... You know the line. The god of something and wine. And my other book boyfriend, also from Game of Thrones, is Sandor Clegane. And literally, Arceus meet Sandor, Sandor meet Arceus. You are mirror images. The only difference is Arceus isn't quite as grumpy. He does have a softer side, and he holds a higher rank than Sandor. Only difference between this pair. I have a type, apparently. Scarred, cunning, smart men that can do banter like no one else. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. But this, 5 stars. 5-star read all day long. Loved it. And that's all I can really say. If you haven't read this, especially for a similar reason to me, where you don't typically get on with YA fantasy, read this. This is amazing. I will be reading the rest of the series as soon as I can get my hands on them. Hey guys, so forgive the way I look right now. Coming at you with the Nimbana shit today. Yeah, I finished Frostblood and I was supposed to go straight into the 3-body problem, but we had a bit of an issue. I was helping my friend move house and I fell and I've severely sprained my ankle and I've torn ligaments in my ankle. So I'm not moving around much for the next couple of weeks. Not the best thing to be happening right now. I do have a blog tour on the 23rd of October for The Stars in Our Eyes by Christy Gardner, which I'm going to be starting probably tomorrow, either tonight or tomorrow, I'm not sure. But I'm probably just going to read some short books at the minute, because in between having to move around and taking painkillers and things like that, attention span is pretty short. So I've got quite a few books on NetGalley and Edelweiss that are, you know, under about 200 pages, so I'm probably going to read a couple of those before going into The Stars in Our Eyes and then the 3-body problem. So I don't know how my TBR Jar readathon is going to go. It's probably going to end up running into November. I might be able to get the 3-body problem and Vicious finished before the end of the month. And maybe make a start on Ashes in the Sun, but most of Ashes of the Sun and Chain of Iron are going to be November reads. But I will keep you updated.